Imagine you're just staring down a seemingly minor health decision.
Right, like a stomach ache that just won't quit.
Exactly. Or, a mild fever that creeps up in the afternoon. Or even just a cut on your finger that's radiating this faint heat.
Yeah, those mundane little moments.
Right. And you have to decide your next move. Like, do you stay home and ride it out? Do you push through and go to work?
Or do you walk into a crowded clinical waiting room?
Exactly. And that single, totally mundane choice you make in your bathroom mirror,
Yeah.
it is no longer just about your personal comfort.
No, not at all.
It is the exact inflection point where localized bacterial infections either hit a dead end or, well, snowball into global health crises.
I mean, the expectation of this cinematic apocalypse, right? Like a sudden, unavoidable asteroid impact, it completely blinds you to the biological reality of how systemic collapse actually begins.
It starts small.
It starts exactly in those quiet, isolated moments of decision-making. I mean, the individual choices made by people in rural villages or dense urban centers today, they dictate the absolute viability of our global medical infrastructure tomorrow.
Especially as you look at the accelerating timeline of the post-antibiotic era.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that is the mission of this deep dive. You're going to look straight into the terrifying, rapidly approaching reality of antimicrobial resistance.
But, and this is crucial, you're also going to explore a radical, ground-level technological counteroffensive.
Yeah, you are looking at a system being deployed right now that essentially turns everyday citizens into a decentralized global epidemic defense network.
Because the old models of disease containment, they are undeniably failing.
They really are.
Relying on centralized hospital networks and delayed top-down government edicts, it's just an obsolete strategy when pathogens are mutating way faster than pharmaceutical pipelines can generate new antimicrobials.
You need a system that intercepts the threat before the patient ever crosses the threshold of a clinic.
Right.
And to map out how you actually execute that interception, the source stack today is incredibly dense.
Very dense, yeah.
You're looking at a live, unfolding medical case report from rural India. Plus, detailed blueprints for an edge computing triage system called the Prima Kiosk, which is powered by Dr. Maya AI.
And we also have cross-sectional infection control studies from Annajah National University in Palestine.
Yeah, and strategic policy proposals targeting the highest levels of the UK's National Health Service. It's really a comprehensive look at how localized data streams can build a planetary defense shield.
The strength of this material, I think, lies in its immediate real-world application. I mean, you aren't dissecting theoretical epidemiological models here.
No, this is happening now.
Exactly. You are looking at live telemetry from a system actively navigating the complexities of human behavior, resource scarcity, and aggressive pathogen mutation.
And to anchor all of this theory into terrifying reality, you need to look at a live case study that hit the network just a few days ago. This is a real-world scenario unfolding right now in Hindupur, which is a city in the Anantapur district of Andhra Pradesh, India.
Yeah, and if the specific diagnostic anomalies in this case are ignored, you are looking at the exact mechanical spark that ignites a regional epidemic. Or worse.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Ground zero here is a 34-year-old married woman living in Hindupur.
And the only reason you even have this granular real-time visibility into her case is a highly serendipitous personal connection, right?
It really is. Her brother happens to be an app developer actively involved in building the Dr. Maya Kiosk concept.
Wow.
Yeah, the very system designed for community-level early triage.
And she doesn't speak English or Kannada, right?
Right. So when her condition deteriorated, her brother just bypassed the standard, sluggish, local medical reporting chain.
He went straight to the top.
Exactly. He reached out directly to the creator of the Dr. Maya AI for guidance. He fed the clinical picture straight into the developer network.
So what did that clinical picture look like initially?
Well, it was alarming, but it initially presented as severe gastroenteritis. She developed acute abdominal pain, bloody diarrhea, and persistent vomiting.
Okay, that sounds rough.
Very. But the critical variable here, the behavioral constant you see preceding almost every major outbreak, is the delay.
She waited.
She waited at least 48 hours, simply hoping the symptoms were self-limiting.
And that 48-hour incubation and waiting period, that's the ultimate danger zone for transmission, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because by the time she finally consulted a local physician 3 days ago, the fever had established a highly specific clinical trajectory.
Right. The medical notes recorded a classic stepladder pattern.
Yes.
Which means the temperature is rising progressively higher each evening, dropping slightly by morning, but maintaining an upward systemic systemic trend over several days.
Exactly. And that stepladder fever combined with severe gastrointestinal distress and bloody stool. It immediately points a clinician away from a standard viral bug.
It points toward enteric fever.
Yes. The local doctor suspected typhoid and requested a Whittle test.
And for those who might not know, the Whittle test is a standard rapid serological assay, right?
Yeah.
Used heavily in resource-constrained settings.
Right. It's used to detect agglutinating antibodies against the O and H antigens of Salmonella enterica Typi.
Got it. So the brother took those Whittle test results and, recognizing the potential severity, ran the data straight through the Dr. Maya AI architecture.
And that is when things get really scary. The AI confirmed the Salmonella Typi diagnosis, but the systemic analysis flagged a massive, terrifying anomaly.
Pyelonephritis.
Pyelonephritis.
Which is wild because you expect Salmonella Typhi complications to show up as like osteomyelitis or septicemia,
Right.
not as a severe ascending infection tearing into the kidneys.
No, exactly. That immediately signals a highly resistant atypical strain. I mean, the pathogenesis shift is what terrified the developer of the Dr. Maya system.
Because in 50 years of extensive clinical experience, they noted they had never once encountered pyelonephritis associated purely with Salmonella Typhi.
Never. The pathogen typically invades the reticuloendothelial system, the bone marrow, the liver, the spleen.
Right.
For the bacteria to aggressively colonize the upper urinary tract and the renal parenchyma, it implies the strain has either acquired novel virulence factors, allowing it to bypass standard immune checkpoints, or early inappropriate antibiotic exposure severely altered the host microbiome and disease course.
Wow. So it completely shatters the standard risk profile for typhoid.
It really does.
You are no longer dealing with a predictable, treatable pathogen. You're dealing with an evolutionary wildcard.
Yeah.
And that amplifies the transmission threat exponentially when you look at the vector mechanics in that specific geographical location.
Because Salmonella typhi transmission is strictly fecal-oral, it requires the ingestion of food or water contaminated with the feces of an infected person.
Right, and in a sanitized environment with robust sewage infrastructure, the R0 remains relatively low.
Exactly. But in Hindupur, the primary mechanical vector drastically accelerates the spread.
The common housefly.
The common housefly.
And the climate in Andhra Pradesh right now is essentially functioning as a massive open-air bioreactor.
Oh, totally. The intense heat and humidity are optimizing the reproductive cycle of houseflies.
So the fly lands on contaminated waste, the pathogen adheres to its legs and mouth parts.
And within minutes, it deposits an infectious colony-forming unit directly onto local food sources.
It's just a terrifyingly efficient delivery system.
And what makes this exceptionally dangerous is the prodromal shedding.
Right, explain that.
Patients infected with typhoid are highly contagious during the early prodromal phase, which is the exact 48-hour window where this 34-year-old woman was sitting at home, assuming she just had a minor stomach bug.
So she was actively shedding the pathogen before the most debilitating symptoms forced her into a clinic.
Yes.
I mean, if she is shedding a hypervirulent, potentially drug-resistant strain of typhoid for 2 days in an environment swarming with mechanical fly vectors, the contact tracing math just becomes a nightmare.
It's impossible.
Did she prepare meals for her husband during that window? Are there local street food vendors operating near her residence?
Almost certainly.
Because if a housefly bridges the gap from her sanitation facilities to a local food cart serving dozens of daily wage laborers, you aren't tracking a linear infection chain anymore.
No, you're looking at an exponential radial blast radius across the city.
This is why the intervention powered by the Dr. Maya AI was so critical and aggressive.
Exactly. The moment the AI flagged the pyelonephritis anomaly, the development team bypassed the local clinic entirely.
They went straight to the top again.
Right. They directly alerted the public health director for Andhra Pradesh. They transmitted the documentation detailing the atypical pathogenesis and the absolute necessity for an immediate localized public health lockdown.
Because the protocol failure at the local level is glaring. I mean, the doctor who diagnosed the typhoid and identified the kidney involvement should have recognized the epidemiological threat instantly.
They should have.
They should have ordered strict hospital isolation, notified public health authorities 3 days ago, mobilized a contact tracing grid across Hindupur, and established a public helpline to screen anyone exhibiting early gastrointestinal symptoms.
But they didn't. And the systemic vulnerability there is obvious. If you are relying on an overworked local physician to independently connect all the dots between an atypical renal complication, the ambient climate maximizing fly vectors, and the threat of an antimicrobial resistant outbreak.
You are going to lose that gamble more often than you win it.
Exactly. The cognitive load on the human clinician is simply too high. You need a system that automatically recognizes the pattern and triggers the containment protocol without hesitation.
We narrowly avoided a massive untraceable outbreak here just because an app developer happened to check his sister's Weedle results using advanced AI.
Yeah, relying on that kind of extreme statistical luck is a horrific public health strategy.
You really have to shift the timeline. Like, how does this exact scenario in Hindupur play out if the proposed countermeasure, the Prima Kiosk network, had already been deployed in her neighborhood?
Okay, so PRIMA stands for Personal Risk Evaluation and Mental Assurance.
Right.
If that infrastructure exists in her village, the 48-hour prodromal blind spot just disappears.
Completely.
Completely. The moment she experiences the initial abdominal cramping and nausea, she doesn't wait at home hoping it resolves. She walks to the local kiosk.
And then the Dr. Maya AI processes the initial symptom clustering, factors in the localized epidemiological data regarding enteric fever prevalence, and flags the high-risk trajectory 3 days earlier.
Yes, it initiates a strict isolation protocol before she ever steps foot in that doctor's waiting room and exposes the clinical staff.
But, the friction point here isn't really the AI's diagnostic capability, is it? It's the user interface. You are dealing with a 34-year-old woman who doesn't speak the dominant technological languages of English or Kannada, living in a resource-constrained environment. A sophisticated diagnostic algorithm is completely useless if the patient can't figure out how to input their data.
And that accessibility barrier is exactly what the Prima architecture was engineered to demolish. The system does not require literacy.
None at all.
None. It doesn't rely on complex drop-down menus or text input. It operates entirely through a multilingual, voice-first, natural language processing interface.
That's incredible.
The AI is actually trained on over 22 Indian languages and regional dialects.
Wow.
So it can parse the specific colloquial phrasing a patient might use to describe a stepladder fever or bloody stool in their native tongue.
It talks to you, listens to your specific dialect, and utilizes highly intuitive visual icon matching to confirm symptoms.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The physical hardware engineering of these kiosks.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't just deploy a fragile touchscreen tablet in the middle of an Indian summer or a monsoon and expect it to function as critical medical infrastructure.
No, it would melt or short out in a day.
The source material literally defines this as survival-grade architecture.
Right. And the hardware specifications are built around the concept of distributed intelligence.
Which means?
It means this is not just a thin client pinging a cloud server in another country. The core Dr. Maya AI engine, the neural processing unit, it lives locally inside the physical box.
Oh, so the kiosk operates entirely offline if necessary.
Exactly. It is solar-powered with internal battery inverters designed to withstand extreme thermal loads and dust ingress.
Amazing.
It does have dual SIM 4G and 5G failovers for when network connectivity is available to push telemetry, but the actual diagnostic triage capability is never compromised by a grid failure.
So you are packing the diagnostic capabilities of an emergency triage desk into a ruggedized, autonomous obelisk.
Basically, yeah. It features a 21-inch high-visibility touchscreen, a thermal printer to generate physical diagnostic reports for the patient, and a QR scanner to link with mobile health records.
But the leap from a standard digital symptom checker to a clinical-grade medical device happens through the IoT, the Internet of Things, sensor integration.
Right, because the kiosk isn't just asking questions, it is conducting a physical biometric examination.
That's what?
Well, the system integrates medical-grade pulse oximetry, automated blood pressure cuffs, high-precision temperature sensors to independently verify that stepladder fever pattern.
That makes sense.
And even single-lead ECG traces to screen for cardiac anomalies associated with severe sepsis.
The policy proposals also detail integration for automated lateral flow test readers. So if you suspect strep or a respiratory virus, the machine physically reads the assay.
Yes. It even includes automated urine dipstick analysis, utilizing internal optical sensors to read the chemical reagent pads.
It creates a comprehensive multimodal data profile.
Right. So in the Hindupur scenario, the machine logs her native language description of the abdominal pain, physically measures her elevated temperature,
Right.
analyzes the optical data from a potential stool or urine sample if required by the localized protocol, and feeds that massive array of biometric telemetry directly into the cognitive engine.
Gathering all that biometric data is almost the easy part, though. I mean, the real danger of consumer-facing diagnostic tech is the algorithmic rigidity.
Oh, for sure.
Standard decision trees symptom checkers are notoriously brittle. They either tell you to drink some water for a mild cold, or they panic and tell you to call an ambulance because you might have a rare lymphoma.
Yeah, there's no nuance.
So how does the Dr. Maya AI actually process that pulse oximetry and temperature data to avoid those useless binary extremes?
Okay, so the Dr. Maya system utilizes the KLM protocol. That stands for Cognitive-Assisted Life-Saving Medical Triage. It intentionally abandons rigid algorithmic decision trees. Instead, it utilizes probabilistic pattern matching designed to mirror the cognitive reasoning of an experienced junior doctor.
Oh, so it's dynamic.
Very. It dynamically weighs the clinical significance of a symptom based on the clustering of other biometric data. It takes that complex, multidimensional data array and distills it down into 4 highly actionable, color-coded triage categories.
And the psychology of this color coding is basically the operational foundation of the entire global network. You have to translate complex medical data into immediate, undeniable behavioral commands. Let's break down the spectrum.
Sure. So the baseline is green. Green indicates a moderate, manageable condition.
Right.
The AI advises you to schedule a standard appointment with a nurse or monitor the symptoms at home, giving you specific physiological thresholds to watch for. It represents safe, decentralized management.
Okay, what's next?
The next level up is yellow. Yellow signifies a mild, self-limiting condition. The system advises rest, hydration, and directs you to a local pharmacist for specific over-the-counter symptomatic relief.
So it's designed to reinforce patient autonomy and trust in natural recovery for non-critical illnesses.
Exactly. And the yellow protocol is mathematically crucial for clearing the massive bottlenecks in primary care networks.
But then you hit the critical action triggers.
Right. Red is the absolute emergency protocol.
Right.
The AI has detected a life-threatening physiological anomaly like a cardiac event, severe respiratory distress, acute trauma. The system immediately instructs the patient to call emergency services or even dispatches an ambulance directly through the network.
It aggressively routes true trauma to the hospital infrastructure where it belongs.
Exactly. But the linchpin of the entire epidemiological defense strategy, the color that dictates the survival of the post-antibiotic era, is blue. Blue is the contagion flag. It indicates a high probability of an infectious bacterial or viral pathogen. The moment the AI calculates that pathogenic risk, it flashes blue and triggers a rigid, immediate isolation protocol.
Applying the blue protocol to the 34-year-old woman in Hindupur fundamentally alters the timeline.
Completely.
She inputs her symptoms, the machine verifies the fever, and the AI recognizes the high probability signature of a severe enteric fever.
It doesn't necessarily generate a definitive microbiological diagnosis of Salmonella Typhi with pyelonephritis right there on the spot.
Right, but it instantly recognizes the epidemiological threat of a severe, contagious fecal-oral pathogen.
Yes. The screen flashes blue. It advises immediate home isolation, instructs her on sanitation protocols to protect her husband, and basically blocks her from entering a local clinic where she would expose the staff.
It creates a localized firewall around the patient, severing the transmission chain before the fly vectors can establish a community-wide foothold. Wait, from a purely medical standpoint, the blue protocol makes perfect logical sense. Isolate the infected vector. But sociologically, this entire concept falls apart the moment you deploy it in the real world.
How so?
Well, you are telling a daily wage rural laborer or a street food vendor to isolate for a week. In that economic reality, isolation means their family starves.
Yeah.
A glowing blue color code on a kiosk screen isn't going to stop a desperate person from going to work. Without an economic safety net, the blue protocol is just a...
Precisely. The vision outlined in the policy briefs is that triggering a blue isolation alert automatically interfaces with local and national welfare infrastructure.
That's incredible.
The digital flag doesn't just tell you to stay home, it automatically initiates a localized food delivery protocol to your residence, or it directly pings the government's digital payment architecture to instantly transfer temporary wage compensation straight to your mobile device.
You are handing an AI triage kiosk the authority to distribute the economic resources of the state to ensure public compliance. That is a staggering paradigm shift.
It is.
The machine is essentially writing a digital prescription for a government subsidy because paying a citizen to stay home is infinitely cheaper than funding the medical response to a regional typhoid outbreak.
Exactly. Without that immediate automated economic stabilization, containment is a myth. People will just ingest fever reducers, suppress their symptoms, crowd onto public transport, and efficiently distribute the pathogen across the commercial grid.
Yeah, they have to survive.
Right. The welfare trigger is the only mechanism that makes isolation a viable, rational choice for vulnerable populations.
You really have to utilize these radical AI-driven economic interventions because the alternative is a total collapse of the medical safety net.
Right.
You are deploying this complex isolation infrastructure to keep people out of the hospitals because the hospitals themselves are becoming the most dangerous places on Earth.
Sadly, yes.
When you look at the data
Yeah.
driving the post-antibiotic era, you realize why keeping a patient at home is the ultimate priority. Let's talk about AMR.
Antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, is methodically dismantling 70 years of modern medical progress. The foundational safety net of broad-spectrum antibiotics is failing because bacterial evolution is outpacing pharmaceutical development.
We've basically trained the pathogens to defeat our most powerful weapons.
We have.
And the projections in the source material are apocalyptic. Like, if the current trajectory of antibiotic misuse continues unabated, by the year 2030, global antimicrobial resistance will exceed 52%. By 2050, AMR is projected to cause 10 million deaths annually. That is 10 million people dying every single year from routine infections, like a scraped knee, a minor surgery, a standard UTI, that were completely curable a decade ago.
It's terrifying. But the Prima model suggests that widespread aggressive deployment of an edge computing triage system could reduce that 10 million peak by 30%.
Wow.
You are looking at a potential mechanism to save 3 million lives annually simply by intercepting the patient before they demand an inappropriate prescription.
Because you have to look at the behavioral mechanism driving that resistance at the grassroots level. A patient feels the onset of a mild upper respiratory infection, a viral cough, maybe a low-grade fever.
Right.
Driven by anxiety and the need to return to work, they bypass rest and go straight to the local chemist demanding antibiotics.
And the pharmacist, lacking accurate diagnostic tools and incentivized by the commercial transaction, dispenses a broad-spectrum antibiotic.
It's like taking a broad-spectrum antibiotic for a viral cold is like carpet bombing a city to stop a single burglar.
That's a perfect analogy. You miss the burglar entirely because the viral pathogen is completely immune to the antibiotic mechanism, but you absolutely devastate your own internal infrastructure.
You wipe out the complex symbiotic microbiome in your gut.
Exactly, leaving a scorched earth environment perfectly primed for highly resistant, opportunistic superbugs to colonize and thrive.
You are actively manufacturing superbugs in your own digestive tract.
Yes.
But the community-level misuse is only the first phase of the disaster. The second phase, which the sources detail with terrifying precision, shatters the ingrained belief that the hospital is a sterile sanctuary for the sick.
Right. You really have to examine the cross-sectional study conducted at An-Najah National University in Palestine, which was included in the source stack.
Okay, let's get into it.
They didn't investigate the intensive care unit or the infectious disease wards. They specifically targeted their radiology department as a primary nexus for the amplification of multi-drug-resistant microorganisms.
Wait, radiology?
Mm-hmm.
A patient goes into the hospital for a diagnostic MRI or a CT scan, completely isolated from the emergency room trauma, and yet the data shows they're walking into a highly concentrated biological minefield.
Yes. The study meticulously maps the reality of nosocomial or healthcare-associated infections. The strict infection control checklists exist, the N95 masks, the gowns, the specialized environmental disinfectant.
Sure, the protocols are there.
But the sheer volume of patient throughput in a modern hospital makes maintaining a perfect sterile barrier physically impossible. High-touch surfaces, the scanner beds, the lead aprons, the control panels, they rapidly develop resilient bacterial biofilms.
And the study isolates a uniquely modern, highly mobile vector that completely bypasses standard PPE protocols, right?
Yes. The smartphone.
The smartphone. The mobile phone functions as the ultimate fomite. Imagine a radiology technician physically positioning a patient, inadvertently contaminating their gloves.
Okay.
They step behind the lead glass, take out their mobile phone to check a message, and transfer the pathogen to the screen.
They discard the gloves, wash their hands, but the moment they touch their phone again, the sterile chain is broken.
Because the mobile phone is just a warm, constantly handled, rarely sterilized incubator.
Exactly. The technician then touches the control panel or the next patient, effectively bridging the gap between isolated individuals.
That is deeply unsettling.
This study confirms that these radiology environments and the mobile devices used within them are heavily colonized by devastating pathogens like MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and VRE, vancomycin-resistant Enterococci.
So the supreme tragic irony is a patient with a compromised immune system entering the hospital for a life-saving scan, lying down on an MRI bed, and acquiring an untreatable multi-drug-resistant MRSA infection.
Yeah.
The centralized healthcare facility, designed to cure, operates mechanically as a highly efficient distribution hub for incurable superbugs.
And this specific paradox is the core philosophy driving Dr. Srivatsa, the architect of the Prima network.
Right.
He argues a fundamental epidemiological truth. When you do not possess a biochemical cure, which is the rapidly approaching reality of the AMR crisis, strict containment is your only viable survival strategy.
You must construct an impenetrable isolation shield.
Exactly. You have to starve the pathogen of new hosts by freezing the movement of the infected.
If the AI kiosk flags your symptoms with a blue alert, you stay home.
Right.
You don't walk into the local pharmacy to demand the antibiotics that will carpet bomb your microbiome, and you absolutely do not walk into that radiology waiting room to inadvertently deposit a novel superbug onto a high-touch surface where it will infect a dozen immunocompromised patients.
By establishing the triage perimeter in the community, you actively protect the structural integrity of the hospital system. You keep the contagious vectors out, preserving the sterile environment for those who require acute surgical or trauma care.
The clinical and epidemiological logic of the isolation shield is flawless. It really is.
Yeah, on paper, it's perfect.
But the deployment of complex technology in resource-constrained environments usually fails at the economic level.
Yeah.
You cannot rely on a constant influx of philanthropic capital to maintain a hardware network across rural India or urban slums.
No, you can't.
If the Prima Kiosk is just a charity drop-off, the moment the solar inverter blows a fuse or the touchscreen cracks, the machine just gathers dust. So how does this system actually survive and scale economically?
Well, the operational brilliance of the Prima rollout is that it is fundamentally engineered as a decentralized, grassroots commercial enterprise.
Oh, interesting.
These kiosks are not owned and operated by a distant NGO or a bureaucratic public health department. The system trains and employs local individuals like mothers, street food vendors, neighborhood entrepreneurs as what they call Maya advocates.
Okay, so these local operators are financially compensated to maintain, power, and facilitate access to the kiosks.
Exactly.
You are converting public health infrastructure into a self-sustaining micro-franchise business model.
Right.
The psychological impact of that must be massive. I mean, if a top-down government-mandated medical team rolls into a village to conduct diagnostic testing, the natural human reaction is suspicion and resistance.
Always.
But if the machine is maintained by the woman who sells vegetables on your street, and she is the one guiding you through the voice interface and explaining the color codes, you instantly bypass the trust barrier.
And trust is the most valuable currency in epidemiology.
Yeah.
And the system extends that integration to the existing local healthcare hierarchy, specifically the neighborhood chemists. Across the developing world, the local pharmacy is the de facto primary care clinic.
Right. Patients seek advice and medication from the chemist long before they spend the money to see a physician.
Exactly. So instead of designing an AI that tries to render the local pharmacist obsolete, the Prima system actively upgrades their operational capability. It formalizes their diagnostic authority.
That's so smart.
Precisely. When a patient utilizes the kiosk and triggers a yellow triage code indicating a mild non-bacterial condition, the AI generates a specific bounded authorization for the local chemist.
Okay.
It explicitly authorizes the dispensing of symptomatic relief, paracetamol, hydration salts, antihistamines, but it throws up a hard digital firewall against antimicrobials.
Ah. So it empowers the pharmacist to look at the AI report and definitively say, the cognitive triage confirms you do not need antibiotics.
Yes. It provides the pharmacist with the clinical backing to deny the inappropriate demand, stopping the AMR manufacturing cycle right at the point of sale, while still allowing the chemist to generate legitimate revenue through the authorized symptomatic treatments.
It aligns public health outcomes with local commercial incentives.
It is a masterclass in behavioral economics applied to infectious disease.
It really is.
And when you analyze the behavioral telemetry coming off the Dr. Maya AI pilot programs, you uncover another critical psychological mechanism driving the collapse of clinical infrastructure: the mismanagement of human fear. The data reveals a staggering anomaly. 73% of all AI triage consultations occur within the narrow window between 8:00 p.m. and 2:00 a.m.
Wait, 73%. That specific time block is illuminating. People aren't necessarily getting sicker in the middle of the night. Their psychological defenses are dropping.
Exactly.
A parent wakes up at midnight, their child is crying, the skin feels hot to the touch, the amygdala just hijacks the prefrontal cortex. The human brain interprets the uncertainty of a fever in the dark as an immediate mortal threat.
The anxiety is a physiological response to an information deficit. In a traditional system, that midnight panic results in the parent rushing the child to the nearest accident and emergency department, demanding immediate attention for a fever that is entirely manageable.
They clog the trauma queues, exhaust the clinical staff, and expose their child to the nosocomial fomites we discussed earlier.
Right. But the Prima Kiosk intercepts that amygdala hijack right at the neighborhood level. The parent walks down the street, runs the child's biometric data through the kiosk, and if the system flashes green or yellow, the AI injects immediate clinical-grade assurance into the situation.
It separates the highly amplified psychological fear from the actual physiological reality of the illness.
Yes, it gives the parent the definitive confidence to return home, manage the fever, and wait for the local clinic to open in the morning.
It mathematically deflates the panic-driven surge that repeatedly paralyzes emergency departments. So what does this all mean? You have a solar-powered edge computing architecture that systematically prevents hospital overcrowding, formally integrates with local microeconomies, halts the indiscriminate dispensing of broad-spectrum antibiotics, and manages the psychological midnight panic of parents. It seems hyper-optimized for the developing world.
It is, but
the source material details a massive strategic push to integrate this exact technology into the heart of the Western medical establishment, the UK's National Health Service. How does a system built for rural India translate to the NHS?
the foundational crises paralyzing the NHS are mechanically identical to the problems in Hindupur, just operating on a different budget.
Right.
The NHS is buckling under insurmountable bottlenecks at general practitioner surgeries, dangerous multi-hour delays in A&E departments, and severe vulnerabilities within elderly care facilities.
And the NHS policy brief outlines a strategy to deploy Prima Kiosks as the absolute first line of defense, like the ultimate decentralized gatekeeper.
Yes.
You envision these diagnostic obelisks integrated into supermarket pharmacies, public transit hubs, and critically, directly inside the lobbies of nursing homes.
The nursing home deployment is revolutionary, honestly. Elderly patients possess inherently fragile immune systems. They are highly susceptible to rapid sepsis and are the primary victims of those multi-drug-resistant hospital superbugs.
Right.
If you place a Prima Kiosk directly in the care home, the nursing staff can run daily, high-precision biometric sweeps. The AI can detect the subtle, localized physiological deviations of an early-stage urinary tract infection days before it escalates into systemic shock.
So you treat the infection locally with targeted, appropriate medication, entirely preventing the traumatic, high-risk emergency hospital admission.
Exactly.
And for the broader public, if you place these kiosks in supermarkets, you mathematically eliminate the GP bottleneck. If thousands of patients with yellow viral colds are reassured by the AI and diverted to the pharmacy aisle, the general practitioner suddenly has the bandwidth to dedicate deep, complex clinical analysis to the red and blue patients who actually require human expertise.
It optimizes the human clinician. But the ultimate geopolitical application detailed in the NHS proposal, the capability that transforms this from a highly efficient triage tool into planetary defense infrastructure, is the epidemic defense network.
Oh, this is where the local edge computing nodes link together to form a macro intelligence. Explain the real-time surveillance mechanics for us.
So every single interaction with a Prima Kiosk, every elevated temperature reading,
Yeah.
every localized clustering of gastrointestinal complaints, every automated lateral flow test result, it is all stripped of identifying personal data
Mm-hmm.
and instantly fed into a centralized global epidemiological dashboard.
Cool.
The kiosks function as a distributed planetary nervous system.
Right.
You are turning millions of everyday citizens into a high-density network of biological sensors.
Right.
The predictive power generated by that volume of real-time telemetry is staggering. The sources actually highlight that during a standard seasonal influenza wave, this decentralized network identified the epidemic onset and geographical trajectory 6 to 14 days earlier than the traditional, sluggish laboratory surveillance apparatus.
And in the mathematics of epidemiology, a 14-day lead time is an eternity.
It's math. It provides public health authorities the operational window to surge medical supplies, preemptively staff hospitals, and issue targeted warnings before the exponential curve ever breaks. And crucially, because the data flows directly from the citizen to the dashboard, the truth outpaces political friction.
Ah, I see. A local government might be highly incentivized to suppress the early reports of a novel pathogen to protect their economy or political standing.
But they cannot hide a massive geographically concentrated cluster of Prima kiosks simultaneously flashing blue. The biometric data bypasses the bureaucracy.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces you to confront the ultimate what-if of modern history. You have to apply the mechanics of this global nervous system to the defining trauma of our generation.
Okay.
Imagine if a dense, fully operational network of these Prima kiosks had been integrated across Wuhan, China in December of 2019.
Oh, man. If that network was live, the Dr. Maya cognitive engine would have detected the statistical impossibility of the localized respiratory anomalies instantly. It would have recognized the aggressive atypical pneumonia clustering and the severe pulse oximetry drops days or weeks before human doctors could coordinate their suspicions.
Exactly. The entire region's kiosk network would have locked into a hard blue alert, automatically triggering containment protocols and firing undeniable real-time telemetry to global health organizations before the first official heavily sanitized report was ever drafted.
The early detection and the immediate automated localized containment would have profoundly altered the trajectory of the outbreak.
You are looking at the mechanism that could have suppressed the transmission chain before the pathogen ever reached an international airport. The preservation of human life and the avoidance of global economic devastation is almost incomprehensible to quantify.
That is the raw power of what this technology represents. It isn't merely an optimization of waiting room logistics. It is the blueprint for a permanent, structural, decentralized defense grid against the biological threats that the post-antibiotic era guarantees are coming.
It absolutely demands a complete recalibration of how you perceive healthcare. You have to abandon the reactive, centralized model of waiting for a cure in a hospital and embrace a proactive, highly distributed model of community-level containment and early interception.
You are looking at a radical redefinition of your own role within the global health ecosystem. Like the next time you wake up with a persistent fever or an unexplainable pain, your instinct will be tested.
Right.
Do you fall back on the obsolete habit of rushing into a crowded clinical environment, demanding a chemical intervention that might actively destroy your microbiome, while simultaneously exposing yourself to the invisible, multi-drug-resistant fomites coating the waiting room chairs?
Or do you utilize the localized technology to evaluate your exact physiological risk, trust the cognitive triage, and actively protect the structural integrity of your community? It completely shifts the burden of defense from the pharmaceutical laboratories directly to the individual citizen.
And it leaves us with something huge to think about. Because if an AI dictates who gets a blue alert, and consequently who receives the automated government welfare payments required to stay home, you are fundamentally handing an algorithm the power to distribute the economic resources of a nation.
Yeah.
You are integrating biometric telemetry directly with state financial controls to enforce public compliance. As this epidemic defense network inevitably scales to cover millions of citizens, the real question isn't whether the AI can outsmart the evolutionary biology of the bacteria.
No.
The real question is whether our political and economic systems are truly prepared to take their operational orders from a solar-powered kiosk.